Hello and welcome to this brief presentation, Genealogy Beyond the Basics. And in this presentation, I'll be talking about building a biography. When you think about it, a family tree is just a series of biographies of family members, and everybody's family history is built on biographical information. So it's essential to have some logical and consistent method of building a biography for your family members. In this presentation, I'll discuss the kind of logic that can be used to build a biography, and in this case, I'll be looking at people alive during the census era. Biography is a timeline to which you add information. For everybody, the timeline begins with a birth and ends with a death. And for many people, there is a marriage, or maybe even more than one in between. These three record types are referred to as vital records and are the bare bones of every timeline. Before civil registration, marriage and death or burial records were often kept by the local church or temple. But rather than record births, most Christian churches recorded only baptisms. In this presentation, I'll examine the census era, because it is this near history where most family historians start. For many countries, the census era began in the mid-19th century. In the US, the first population census was enumerated in 1790, but it wasn't until 1870 that all citizens were included. And many states had their own censuses too. Generally speaking, countries have a census every 10 years, and in the US, states had their census between the federal census. In England, the first national census was in 1841. Depending on the country's privacy laws, census records are kept confidential for some time. In the US, it's 72 years. Each census tends to have slightly different information. And because of that, census records add a wealth of information to our biography. They will often confirm the birth and marriage details and often include other family members. They will give us the location so we can see if our family is on the move. It will include occupation, place of birth, and in some cases where the person owned land. We can see friends and neighbours. For the most part, census records follow a pattern. Early in the timeline, we can see parents and siblings, then perhaps a spouse and family. And then as children move out, retirement and possibly grandchildren. From the information from vital and census records, we will now have a reasonable biographical outline, and we can start filling in some of the details. For many timeline, a baptism rather than a birth record helps establish parents and location. However, be careful because many baptisms were given sometime after birth and don't establish a birth date. Of course, if your family member had children, their baptisms would have given good information to establish location, occupation. As we know the location of our family members, we can research the availability of local newspapers, gazettes, and directories, and other types of church records to see if they are mentioned. Location and perhaps census records may indicate if a family member owned land, and the civil authority often holds land and deed records. As we review the vital and census records, we will probably be able to establish if our family member was an immigrant or naturalized citizen. Now we can search for ship manifests, immigration records, or similar information. While looking for these records, we can also look for criminal and civil records for locations of interest. Many trades of occupations had official guild or apprenticeship requirements and kept their records. We can determine if this applies by researching family members' occupations. The prime age for military is from the late teens to the early 30s, although many people stay for an entire career. Based on your timeline, are there any military campaigns or conscriptions to which your relative could have been involved? At the end of life comes gravestone, obituaries, and probates. Some sites hold many pictures of headstones. If you know where your ancestor was buried, often volunteers will locate a gravestone for you. If you know your ancestor's location when they died, Look for death notices and obituaries in local newspapers. Probates and wills will give final instructions and may include friends, families, and other important information. And don't forget to research the witnesses to these documents, as they may have been important people in your ancestor's life. Finally, one of my favorites is using maps to draw out the location information and see it all in context. Although there are many other sources of information in your biography, these are the most common, and this map will result in a reasonable biography for your relative on which you can build further, or even begin to write a narrative of their life. Here is a small bio that I've been working on. It's very brief, so it fits on the page. But as you can see, it follows certain parts of the pattern we discussed earlier. There's a birth record, 1825. There's a death record in 1900. There are in fact 2 marriage records. And there's a number of census records that I can build around. Outside of that, I've just started building some of his occupation records. The muster rolls in 1839 and 1840 shows he was at sea. And some of the addresses later on allow me to know the location. And in May 1874, it looks like he may have been arrested, but I need more information on that. So this shows how the bio outline will start breaking out for you. One of the most important things of a bio, or any kind of research, are your citations. So you can see for every one of my records, there's at least one citation. So I can go back and research the information, make sure it's correct, and more importantly, any genealogist coming behind me can research and know the validity of my information too. Thank you for listening to this presentation, Genealogy Beyond the Basics, where we discuss biographies. Good luck with your research, and if you're interested in any of my presentations, they'll be all on my YouTube channel.